Hello and welcome to this Websites Decoded site submission, where we take your websites and look at what we think would improve their demand generation performance. Today we have FlowForma.com, submitted by Patrick Norton. Thank you, Patrick. Let's go and take a look and see what we can find. Okay, let's dive right in and see what we can see on the homepage. Now, I talk about homepages and in particular hero sections of homepages a lot on Websites Decoded, and that's because they are such an important area with such a high impact. In this case, everything is fairly clear and easy to read, and that's a good thing. But as with many businesses, there are opportunities here too. First of all, we've got this headline consisting of 3 benefits words: automate, accelerate, succeed. Unfortunately, those 3 words don't communicate the value prop of FlowForma very effectively. Ultimately, those 3 words could apply to nearly any solution offered by any business, and so therefore they are not communicating what's special and unique and powerful about FlowForma to its target audience. The subtitle is better, but for me, it still doesn't contain enough differentiation in terms of the value for the specific ideal customer. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of the target market for FlowForma, but I get the impression that in order to benefit quickly and highly from using FlowForma, certain things have to be true about your business. And I think if those things were communicated here, it would be clear to the ideal customer when they visit that they're in the right place. When it comes to homepage messaging, if the wrong visitor to your website can't tell quickly from your messaging that they are in the wrong place and they are not a good fit for what you offer, then the opposite could equally be true. The ideal visitor to your website may not be able to tell quickly that they're in the perfect place and looking at potentially the perfect solution for their needs and challenges. So getting that across in your homepage so that your ICP sees it immediately is really, really key. We've got some nice, very powerful statements below, which I think are good, but probably need evidencing. The term no code is thrown around a lot these days, and as FlowForma correctly identifies throughout the site, usually actually refers to low code solutions. So visitors will of course be familiar with that sort of disappointment and will want to know quickly if this is truly no code. And so showing that would be very, very valuable. Award-winning and ROI in 6 weeks or less, also very, very good statements, but kind of, I think, need evidencing quite quickly. Now, imagery is an important part of the homepage hero too. And here we've got, a nice mood setting image, but unfortunately that doesn't help to communicate the value proposition either. And I would really like to see a carefully chosen product image here that backs up a value proposition that makes differentiation and the ideal customer specific and clear. Below the homepage messaging, we've got something I'm seeing quite often at the moment, which is a quick start kind of call to action. Just give us your email address, click a button, and you'll be off to somewhere. I have reservations about this approach, and I wonder if they are as much an attempt by marketers to ratchet up lead generation results from their website as it is to create buyer value. This version has clear language around start your free trial, which is better than what you see sometimes, such as get started, learn more, go here. But I, for one, would be skeptical that you can start a free trial with just my email address. And so my suspicion is that this will take me to another form. And that's not an attractive call to action, this early in the website. We've talked about the challenge with choosing calls to action for the hero before. It's hard to find one that works particularly well in terms of clicks and conversions, probably because it's not the best point on the website for a buyer to click and go somewhere else on their visit. They're probably much more inclined to use the navigation or to simply scroll. And so in some cases, I think it's worth testing no CTA at all. Get the value prop across, communicate it clearly, back it up with imagery, and don't attempt to coerce people to convert at this early stage. You might find that at an overall level, you get better results from that kind of approach. This header section also is mostly static, which is usually the best approach. The only bit of motion is this arrow, and it's distracting me constantly. As a B2B buyer, I don't need to be informed or told to scroll down, and motion distracts the human brain, the human eye, and takes our attention away from the content. And so I would simply remove that bit of animation, which isn't adding to the user experience and may actually just be impairing a visitor's ability to really concentrate on what we want them to, which is the content that's on offer. So I'd be looking to stop that moving. Okay, if we scroll down, we start to get into the content of the site, and we've got some video here. Given that this is a process automation tool, which is a complex offering, I'm pleased to see that there is video available. Video is a great way to communicate something as complicated as this. My only comment here is I always like to see the video experience controlled a bit better, a bit more intentionally, to make it easy for the visitor to consume and learn from that content. The YouTube player, YouTube's great for SEO, great for discoverability, great for content and for education, but the YouTube player is far from the optimal experience on your core marketing website. The visitor to this site has the option of watching this video in this very small window or at full screen, or leaving the site to go to YouTube, none of which are the optimum solution. The video may or may not have subtitles embedded. Usually YouTube videos don't. They rely on YouTube's subtitling software. So a small screen like this without subtitles, because of course most users are not going to turn on the audio to hear the soundtrack, is far from optimal in my opinion. And I'd like to see this video larger, certainly when you click to play, larger on screen with subtitles embedded, so that it's as easy as possible for the visitor to get the value out of what's in that video. A little side note here for users of HubSpot, which is a fantastic CMS with lots of great powers. CTAs, HubSpot calls to action, are not the best approach in all situations for creating links and buttons. So in situations like this, where you've got a simple button linking a visitor from one page to the other, but you've got a button language which doesn't clearly describe the destination, using a HubSpot CTA also obscures the destination from the visitor, in terms of what they see pop up in their browser when they hover over it. Now, most website teams are not going to be using the analytics on every single link that a CTA gives you to iteratively improve what they put in those buttons. So it's usually best to use plain HTML to link from page A to B, and use CTAs where you've got the opportunity to combine a value proposition or a benefit statement along with some creative, and the analytics are meaningful and useful to you in terms of testing variations and improving the conversion rate of that CTA. And website buttons usually don't give us that opportunity, so it's potentially a suboptimal application of those CTAs. Now below here we've got some content that, for one, I could do with headlining. I could do with knowing what it is I'm looking at here, so that I can sort of frame it and get the context of it. And it's all hidden behind these animating cards, which we see throughout this website. May not be the most effective way to communicate this content, because motion like this, again, it's just so satisfying to watch. It distracts us from the purpose that we have to be here, which is to learn and inform ourselves about what's on offer. So I don't know exactly by glancing what's being communicated in these 4 cards, and I'm struggling to absorb the content that's behind the animation, so that could be improved. As we scroll down, we start to learn that FlowForma helps a lot of customers in a lot of different sectors. And that's pretty awesome. There's a lot of case studies, there's a lot of testimonials, there's a lot of evidence that businesses are benefiting from using FlowForma. I love it. I would like to see more made of the case studies and their content in terms of the problems solved or the outcomes achieved for the businesses in question here, to create a little bit more appeal and draw or instant value in terms of the proof that's being communicated. We could be making more use of that in this space where we present the links to them. And it would probably be advisable to move these logos, pretty impressive logos, to an earlier position in the page. Heat map software will probably tell us that only a proportion of visitors get this low before they click something and go off. So they're not seeing that proof signal, those logos in most cases. And it wouldn't be terribly disruptive to move that much closer to the hero and get that signal across quickly. But I think it's fantastic that we've got so much evidence on this site from such credible brands, and good on FlowForma for leveraging that. Down at the bottom of the page, we've got the pretty classic last call CTA that you find at the bottom of a lot of B2B website pages. It's an area where marketers struggle to find an effective approach. And again, it's probably because buyers are not inclined to act in this way at this point on the page. If they've not left already, then they've reached the footer, and they'll probably be thinking about either using the footer or the main navigation to continue the journey. CTAs here, especially bottom of the funnel ones, just simply don't tend to perform anywhere near as well as we would hope. And I would, in most cases, advocate for leaving it out, especially if they cause you frustration in terms of creating original copy and figuring out what to say and show. It's just not the most effective place to convert a visitor into a MQL or a high intent lead with a bottom of the funnel offer. In terms of the footer, we've got some good stuff here, some useful information. We've got some relevant links. I think the things that could make this better are twofold. One, I'm convinced that a newsletter subscription is a pretty poor use of valuable real estate here. B2B website visitors are not terribly minded to become newsletter subscribers these days in most cases, I don't believe. And furthermore, so probably don't get a whole heap of conversions on this. And the value of those conversions, if you do get them, in terms of your ability to, well, if you measure the pipeline that's generated from them, is probably very, very low. Subscribers and leads, the type of leads that download content, typically close into revenue at a very, very low rate for businesses these days. So I've always favoured, or for a long time have favoured, using a contact form in the footer. I'd give it less space than this one, but a contact form in the footer, because that provides buyers with a means of reaching out to your sales team, fundamentally, whenever the inspiration strikes them, crucially on any page where the inspiration strikes them, without them having to go searching for a method to convert. It works well in lots of cases, and it's worth trying, and it's a better use of space than the newsletter subscribe form, I think, and we see in the data. I think there's room for more links here as well to the commercial pages that FlowForma wants to be found for by buyers. It's great having the bottom of the funnel links here, take a trial, book a demo, and so on, but there are probably terms and pages on those terms for which FlowForma want buyers to find them around process automation. And I would like to be able to navigate to those pages from the footer as well. All right, now we're at the bottom of the homepage. Let's turn our attention to the main navigation. Main navigation, again, is an area which has a very big impact on the user experience and the effectiveness of your website as a demand generator. How effective is it at taking people on a logical journey through the content you have to offer and leading them to the point of high intent conversion where there's a good chance they'll become pipeline and revenue? So the FlowForma navigation is comprehensive. We can find all the content we might need through it, but it might not be as intuitive as we would like it to be to do so. Research has tended to find that language like, who we are, what we do, how it helps, how it works, who you are, things of this nature, are not as effective, probably because they're not as clear and descriptive as products, features, services, etc. And so I would be in favor of testing an approach to navigation that is more direct and specific. Within the navigation, we've got a lot of content presented, and that could be overwhelming. Something which could be addressed and improved, I think, by creating more of a clear visual hierarchy. As we go through these menus, I can't help but notice that my attention is always drawn to the content offers that are being presented, which are not the primary purpose of the navigation, which is to get people to the pages that are critical to their evaluation process, to their research process, and to their purchase process. Within how it works, my attention's drawn all the way to the product news, and then once I sort of tear myself away from that, I've got this section on process automation and process collaboration, which I'm not 100% clear is features or benefits at first glance. I've got to put quite a lot of energy into interpreting that, so I'd like to see that signposted a bit better. I actually suspect that the key page that most visitors want to find is over here, and it's this about FlowForma process automation. This is the introduction to the product, which I think could do with being highlighted much more clearly to get more people to it quickly. And again, I'd also say that people are probably more interested to learn about the product first than about the company. So I could reorder these navigation sections, to align them with the buyer intent when they're on the site. Would probably produce better results in terms of getting people to key pages. It's worth mentioning, of course, that this navigation is horizontal on desktop. These links are not hidden behind a burger menu, and they're not appearing in an unexpected, unintuitive place, such as a vertical navigation, which you sometimes see more commonly when there are lots of links to present, like the FlowForma website. So this is a good thing. This is a good choice. It's intuitive, it's familiar, and it's by far the best way to present navigation to B2B buyers on desktop. So that's a positive. And we've got the core bottom of the funnel call to action here as well, which is pretty clear. The value is fairly easy to understand from that. So that's good. Free trial is attractive in lots of cases. As long as that's what's on offer when people click the button, then that's all good. One more thing I notice when I look at the navigation is that pricing information and customer case studies are hidden within. And if changing the language of the main top level of the navigation to be more direct and more specific, I would like to see pricing and customers or case studies come up to that top level, because those are really key things that buyers are looking for when they're considering and evaluating solutions. And so make good sense, I think, to put those prominent and visible and easy to access. And we'll look at the contents of those in a little bit. If we take the how about FlowForma process automation page as an example of an internal product page, we can use it to look for opportunities to improve demand generation of the site. So here we are on this page, and the things that pop out are, I'm still feel like there's room to show the product more frequently and more clearly. This is a complex product, no doubt, or maybe with easy learning curve, but under the hood there's complexity, and the claims are big and bold, and I want to see that with my own eyes. So product shots would be a useful addition to balance out the copy. Line length, copy line length, is a issue that needs to be borne in mind across the entire website experience. Readers are not able to retain their point in line beyond a certain character count, and in many cases the line length, I think, strays a little bit over that limit. So images would help to constrain the line length, by breaking up the space on the site a bit more effectively. As we scroll down, two things pop out. One, we've got book a demo. book a demo, which is different, very different from the free trial offer in the home in the navigation. So immediately I'm wondering, well, which CTA is most attractive to visitors? Which CTA provides the best close rate into closed won revenue? And which one does FlowForma really want buyers to take? Whichever that is, that should be the primary CTA up in the navigation. But if different buyers, take the book a demo route and the free trial route, and still close, then I think there's plenty of reason to put book a demo and free trial in the header. Different people have different preferences in that regard, and if you are able to offer both, then I would highlight both right there. The important thing is to not have the bait and switch scenario where you say free trial, but you actually offer a demo. Not what's happening in the case of FlowForma, but it's a warning in general. If you offer one thing and then on a landing page you offer something of a far lower attractiveness, book a demo becomes book a discovery call or a consultation, that friction will deter most people from converting. So really good to be clear, specific, and honest with your CTAs. We've got video again, which I'm sure is really, really helpful. The experience, the small YouTube player, the need for subtitles, those things apply equally here. As we scroll down the page, we get some, trust symbols and signs, which are good. Got some content here, which is, again, I think unnecessarily hidden behind animation. Animation is sometimes necessary, animation is sometimes beneficial, but it can quite often be detrimental to the user experience. Given that I think we want visitors to this website to read about the all-in-one nature of the tool, the fact that it's truly no code, etc., for me is a reason or an argument for breaking this out of the animated section and simply having copy and illustration or image, or maybe a animation that changes the image as you read the copy, but not that hides the copy from visibility. Below, we've got some more content that's explaining the value, and I'm all for it. And I think, it's of a good length. I think it could just be better combined with the images on the right. One, it's not clear, which point on the left the images on the right are trying to support. I can't draw a connection between them because they're not aligned in a way that allows me to do that. And it would also balance the amount of copy that I'm trying to read, and help me stay focused. So this section could be structured a little nicer to make it a little more easygoing to consume. And if that were the case, then I'm sure people would get a lot of value from reading about the product here. One thing I'd say generally about this site is that there's an awful lot of layouts used. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like visitors would engage with the site a little bit better if there was a little more consistency applied and a little more restraint in terms of layouts and modular styles. We're all time poor, information rich, and in many cases brain tired, I think. And so anything that makes us work harder to understand the site is working against us. Therefore, I'd like to see the same layouts used a bit more frequently, a bit more consistently, a little bit less variety. That too would create a stronger brand, which you could then build on. Far easier to apply brand consistently to a handful of layouts than it is to several dozen. More great testimonial evidence, which I'm sure is doing, working really well and really hard for FlowForma, and a lot of additional content on the page, which no doubt explains fully, what FlowForma has to offer. Font size and contrast might be a little bit of an issue down here. We would certainly be doing accessibility checks to make sure that everything passed and was easy to read. But it's a comprehensive page with a lot of good information on it as well. Blog content and resources are still very effective tools for getting buyers onto your website through improved SEO, through reaching them early in the decision-making process by giving you content to distribute on social. So I'm always fascinated to look at and see how businesses have designed and presented their educational content. So if we jump over to the FlowForma blog and we pick a recent blog post, I'm going to see what we can suggest here. The FlowForma blog layout is fairly good in its legibility, and reading experience is everything when it comes to blog content. The font has good contrast and is of a good size, so it's fairly readable. I think there's room to bump that up, not least to reduce the line length in some situations. I mentioned earlier that readers, especially when reading on screen, can only hold their point in the line for so long, about 65 to 75 characters, I think is usually the number. And we go over that, at this full length, if you like. So a narrower viewport or a larger font, meaning that fewer characters fit on a line, would improve the reading experience and the legibility and the degree to which people can A, focus on the content, and B, quickly extract the value that they want. Sidebars are a particular point of consternation for me. They have shown themselves to really not help the cause, but more damage it. So ultimately, sidebars are usually used to present an array of navigation devices, recent posts, links to other pieces of content, the ability to subscribe in many cases, and CTAs. Ultimately, a whole load of CTAs. But buyers, visitors to this blog post are not here to use those navigational aids to explore the other content, the other blog posts, the other pages. They're here to learn whether this blog post that they've probably come to via Google, has the answer to the query that they have at the time. So those sidebar CTAs tend to go unclicked first and foremost. The CTAs we put there don't drive people to those pages. The archives, tags, authors, recent posts, etc., don't drive people to those content. And furthermore, they reduce the reader's ability to focus on and consume the content they're there to consume, which reduces the impact and the effect and the overall conversion rate of any CTAs within that content. So sidebars are, for the most part, bad and worthwhile getting rid of completely. Fortunately, in lots of cases, that's quite an easy change to make, and that can really increase the results you see from your blog content in terms of visitors, engagement, clicks on CTAs, leads, and ultimately pipeline. As we scroll down the blog, we see some internal links. Internal linking is a key part of blogging's power and effect. So it's really important to have a clear keyword strategy, content organized into clusters, and we'll talk about resources acting as hubs of those clusters in a moment, and internal links from blog posts to the centers of clusters and to your commercial keyword pages. We see internal links throughout the blog post here, so that's really good. Perhaps the only thing you can then look at to see whether you're optimized is what are the keywords that we're linking using and that those pages are optimized for. Because of course we want to optimize for the commercial keywords that buyers use to describe the solution they're looking for. And sometimes you can find that internal links are there, but they're linking using brand names, product names, or just generic terms that accurately describe the page, but don't contain that commercial keyword that a buyer will use to search for. Although this is only one example, a lot of effort has been put into making this blog post interesting and valuable to the visitor. There's a lot of, there's internal navigation. People know what's in this post ahead of time and can jump to the section they find most interesting. There's useful images. There's video. It's really been thought about in terms of what's presented here. What we find some way down is what I call a text CTA, which is a standout link. Now, I would normally use a HubSpot CTA to achieve this, but it's a standout link that takes a visitor to somewhere else. Text CTAs like this that are not banners, so people don't ignore them while they're in banner blindness mode, but that stand out just enough to be separate from the body copy, can work really well at getting people to explore other content, particularly those hubs in the clusters that you've created. I typically advise having them higher in the blog post, because if people are going to drop off, they're probably going to drop off earlier than this. Around about 1/3 or 1/4 of the way into the post is a good place to place your first tech CTA, to try and keep a few of the people that are, either very quickly satisfied with what they've read, or very quickly running out of patience and are headed off. So moving that up could be effective. And I also like to include a longer benefit statement as well. So, for example, I would always say, read this to learn this other thing. Or, tell them why it's worth their time and their while to go to that page and read that other bit of content, or consume that other bit of content. I would then also still have a visual CTA, a banner that combines value proposition, some creative, for probably the same piece of content that's in the text CTA at the end of the blog post. Once the person has finished reading the blog post, if they get all the way to the bottom, that's probably the only time when they become open to the concept of clicking on something that looks like an ad, looks like a banner, and those still do get clicks in that position. I would get rid of the comments, because let's face it, on B2B websites, we're not typically seeing people have conversations about the content. We're not seeing high volumes of quality contents, and it's another CTA which detracts from the CTA that you actually want buyers to take. So it's going to dilute your overall performance and results, and just create an admin headache, if anything, for you to moderate those comments if they're coming through at all. Blog posts, ideally, from an SEO perspective, should be organized in clusters, and there's nothing better to put at the heart of a cluster than a comprehensive piece of content, a resource in most people's website lingo. If we go and look at FlowForma's reports area, we see something fantastic, which is a lot of content, and I have no doubt that it's quality, comprehensive content. Of course, the opportunity is to ungate this content so that people can view it without having to convert. The data is showing us clearly that people who convert into leads are incredibly hard to close into revenue. Ultimately, your buyers are choosing to avoid becoming a lead. They're choosing to avoid receiving automated email spam, LinkedIn outreach, phone calls, and therefore choosing not to download resources anymore. The people who do download your resources are most likely not in a position to buy now, and won't be for considerable time, if ever. And the conversion rates, the close rates on ebook leads versus anonymous up until the point of completing a bottom of the funnel conversion action, the close rate, the difference in close rate between those two sources of intent is huge. We recommend split funnel analysis so that you can prove this for yourselves, but that data should give you the confidence and the information you need to ungate all of these pages, so that potential buyers can read it freely. They can see and consume your credibility, your expertise, your knowledge, your advice, without having to convert and potentially subject themselves to the things that they hate. And you're no longer optimizing for the generation of low quality leads, which probably cost you to store and to market to, in the same high quantities as before. So taking these guides and ungating them would be a huge step in terms of improving the demand generation potential of the website and the content strategy overall. Okay, well, if all has gone well with a buyer's visit to this website, we hope that they will click on the free trial button and convert into a high intent lead, something we would often call an MQL. So the book a trial page or to take a trial page is obviously a key conversion point. And I think there's some good things being done here. We've certainly seen through studies that people have shared, through some of the tests that we've done with clients, that proof signals on bottom of the funnel conversion pages like this can positively impact conversion rate, and are certainly not a bad thing to have. So the fact that we've got logos of trusted customers, we've got the G2 ranking, is probably helping this page. The image behind the text is probably superfluous to requirements and may make reading it a little bit harder because of the contrast issues over the flesh sections of the photo. But we've got some good copy that's explaining what's going to happen during this trial. We've got a very simple form to fill in, which is really positive for visitors to the site, and we've got the trust signals there as well. And I like the fact there's a bit more to the page in terms of the evidence, in terms of what you'll get. All in all, a pretty good free trial page. Now, what happens after someone fills in that form is, of course, very important in terms of offering a good experience and increasing the likelihood of closing. The quicker you respond to that submission, either by unlocking the free version of your product or by getting them into the necessary meeting if that's a requirement, although if you're saying free trial, I would always prefer it if there was no meeting required, is really, really key. So look at and test how you use email automation, how you use diary booking tools and so on to give people who take that step the best possible experience you can in the fastest way you can to ensure that the effort you've gone to get them there and the effort that they've taken isn't wasted. Okay, well, there we have it. I think that's a few things that could be implemented or at least tested to increase the demand generation performance of this website. And by demand generation, of course, we're talking about the number of visitors that are amongst your ideal customer profile through doing good content creation, good internal linking, good SEO, and B, bypass the lead part of the process, which so many of your buyers do, but go all the way to the bottom of the funnel, take that high intent conversion action and enter the pipeline, where you've got a significantly higher chance of closing them than if you were to, force them to download an ebook first and then nurture them, via email and so on. So hopefully you found that useful. If you test any of those recommendations, we'd love to hear the results and the impact. And I look forward to seeing all of you next time. Thanks and bye.